Well, I think I overdid it a little bit on the coffee today, so I'm feeling kind of, ugh. On the 22nd of July, I wrote to Johnson again and gave him an account of my last interview with my worthy friend, Mr. Edward Dilly, at his brother's house at Beltill in Bedfordshire, where he died soon after I parted with him, leaving me a very kind remembrance of his regard. I informed him that Lord Hales, who had promised to furnish him with some anecdotes for his Lives of the Poets, had sent me 3 instances of priors borrowing from Gumbald in Recueil des Poetes, Tome 3, Epigram to John I owed great obligation, page 25, to the Duke of Naoles, page 32, Sauntering Jack and Idle Joan, page 25. My letter was a pretty long one and contained a variety of particulars, but he, it should be seen, had not attended to it, for his next to me was as follows. To James Boswell, Esquire. My dear sir, are you playing the same trick again and trying who can keep silence longest? Remember that all tricks are either knavish or childish, and that it is as foolish to make experiments upon the consistency of a friend as upon the chastity of a wife. What can be the cause of this second fit of silence I cannot conjecture. But after one trick, I will not be cheated by another, nor will harass my thoughts with conjectures upon the motives of a man who probably acts only by caprice. I therefore suppose you are well, and that Mrs. Boswell is well too, and that the fine summer has restored Lord Arnlech. I am much better than you left me. I think I am better than when I was in Scotland. I forget whether I informed you that poor Thrale has been in great danger. Mrs. Thrale likewise has miscarried and been much indisposed. I thought she was older than to miscarry. Everybody else is well. Langton is in camp. I intend to put Lord Hale's description of Dryden into another edition, and as I know his accuracy, which he would consider the dates. Let me say that again. I intend to put Lord Hale's description of Dryden into another edition, and as I know his accuracy, wish he would consider the dates, which I could not always settle to my own mind. Mr. Thrale goes to Brighthelmston about Michaelmas to be jolly and ride a hunting. I shall go to town, or perhaps to Oxford. Exercise and gaiety, or rather carelessness, will, I hope, dissipate all remains of his malady. And I likewise hope by the change of place to find some opportunities of growing yet better myself. I am, dear sir, your humble servant, Streatham, September 9th, 1779, Sam Johnson. Footnote here about Dryden, which I communicated to him. This is Boswell communicated to Lord Hales, to him from his lordship. Oh, I'm sorry. This is Boswell saying he communicated to Johnson from his lordship, Lord Hales, but it has not yet been published. I have a copy of it. And there's a footnote here from a later editor. The few notices concerning Dryden, which Lord Hales had collected, the author afterwards gave to Mr. Malone. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, there you go. My readers will not be displeased at being told every slight circumstance of the manner in which Dr. Johnson contrived to amuse his solitary hours. I know I, for one, won't. He sometimes employed himself in chemistry, sometimes in watering and pruning a vine, and sometimes in small experiments, at which those who may smile should recollect that there are moments which admit of being soothed only by trifles. Footnote here. In one of his manuscript diaries, there is the following entry, which marks his curious, minute attention. Then there's this part in parentheses, in quote marks. July 26th, 1768. I shaved my nail by accident in wetting the knife, about 1/8 of an inch from the bottom, and about 1/4 from the top. This I measure that I may know the growth of nails. The hole is about 5/8 of an inch. It's like watching grass grow, watching nails grow. Another of the same kind appears August 7th, 1779. There's a part in Latin, but there is a translation, so I'll read the Latin. Partem branchiae dextri carpo proxenam et cotem pectoris circa maximalan dextrem rasi ut nolum feret quanto temporis pilae renoverantur. It says, the translation is, I shaved my right arm next to the wrist and the skin round the right nipple to discover how soon the hair would grow again. So it's just, a bored little man. Or he's a bored big man. He's tall, isn't he? And on August 15, 1773, he wrote, I cut from the vine 41 leaves, which weighed 5 ounces and a half in 8 scruples. I lay them upon my bookcase to see what weight they still lose by drying. Might as well find out, huh? On the 20th of September, I defended myself against his suspicion of me, which I did not deserve, and added, Pray let us write frequently. A whim strikes me that we should send off a sheet once a week, like a stagecoach, whether it be full or not, nay, though it should be empty. The very sight of your handwriting would comfort me. And were a sheet to be thus sent regularly, we should much oftener convey something, were it only a few kind words. Sounds like a good idea. My friend Colonel James Stewart, second son of the Earl of Bute, who had distinguished himself as a good officer of the Bedfordshire militia, had taken a public-spirited resolution to serve his country in its difficulties by raising a regular regiment and taking the command of it himself. This, in the heir of the immense property of Wortley, was highly honorable. Having been in Scotland recruiting, he obligingly asked me to accompany him to Leeds, then the headquarters of his corps. From thence to London for a short time, and afterwards to other places to which the regiment might be ordered. Such an offer, at a time of the year when I had full leisure, was very pleasing, especially as I was to accompany a man of sterling good sense, information, discernment, and conviviality, and was to have a second crop in 1 year of London and Johnston. Of this, I informed my illustrious friend in courageously warm terms in a letter dated the 30th of September from Leeds. Now let's have a little bit more coffee, even though I really shouldn't have any more. But I made the cup, so. What are you going to do? On Monday, October 4th, I called at his house before he was up. He sent for me to his bedside and expressed his satisfaction at this incidental meeting with as much vivacity as if he had been in the gaiety of youth. He called briskly, Frank, go and get coffee and let us breakfast in splendor. During this visit to London, I had several interviews with him, which it is unnecessary to distinguish particularly. I consulted him as to the appointment of guardians to my children in case of my death. Sir, said he, do not appoint a number of guardians. When they are many, they trust one to another, and the business is neglected. I would advise you to choose only one. Let him be a man of respectable character who, for his own credit, will do what is right. Let him be a rich man so that he may be under no temptation to take advantage. And let him be a man of business who is used to conduct affairs with ability and expertness, to whom, therefore, the execution of the trust will not be burdensome. On Sunday, October 10th, we dined together at Mr. Straham's. The conversation having turned on the prevailing practice of going to the East Indies in quest of wealth, Johnson said, a man had better have £10,000 at the end of 10 years passed in England than £20,000 at the end of 10 years passed in India, because you must compute what you give for the money. A man who has lived 10 years in India has given up 10 years of social comfort and all those advantages which arise from living in England. The ingenious Mr. Brown, distinguished by the name of Capability Brown, told me, not to be confused with Encyclopedia Brown, told me that he was once at the seat of Lord Clive, who had returned from India with great wealth, and that he showed him at the door of his bedchamber a large chest, which he said he had once had full of gold. upon which Brown observed, "I'm glad you can bear it, so near your bedchamber." When he talked of the state of the poor in London, Johnson said, "Saunders Welch, the justice, who was once High Constable of Holborn and had the best opportunities of knowing the state of the poor, told me that I underrated the number when I computed that 20 a week, that is above 1,000 a year, died of hunger. Not absolutely of immediate hunger, but of the wasting and other diseases which are the consequence of hunger. This happens only in so large a place as London, where people are not known. What we are told about the great sums got by begging is not true. The trade is overstocked. And you may depend upon it, there are many who cannot get work. A particular kind of manufacture fails. Those who have been used to work as at it can, for some time, work at nothing else. You meet a man begging, you charge him with idleness. He says, 'I am willing to labor. Will you give me work?' 'I cannot.' 'Why, then, have you no right to charge me with idleness?'" Yeah, still happening today. It's kind of sad. We left Mr. Strand's at 7, as Johnson had said he intended to go to evening prayers. As we walked along, he complained of a little gout in his toe and said, "I shan't go to prayers tonight. I shan't go tomorrow. Whenever I miss church on a Sunday, I resolve to go another day, but I do not always do it." There's a fair exhibition of the vibration between pious resolutions and indolence, which many of us have too often experienced. I went home with him, and we had a long, quiet conversation. I read him a letter from Dr. Hugh Blair concerning Pope, in writing whose life he was now employed, which I shall insert as a literary curiosity. And then there's a footnote here that says, I guess it's about the Reverend Dr. Law. The Reverend Dr. Law, Bishop of Carlisle, in the preface to his valuable edition of Archbishop King's Essays on the Origin of Evil, mentions that the principles maintained in it had been adapted by Pope in his Essay on Man, and adds, "The fact, notwithstanding such denial, Bishop Warburton's might have been strictly verified by an exceptional testimony, viz., that of the late Lord Bathurst, who saw the very same system of the better, taken from the Archbishop, in Lord Bolingbroke's own hand, lying before Mr. Pope while he was composing his essay. This is respectable evidence, but that of Dr. Blair is more direct from the fountainhead, as well as more full. Let me add to it that of Dr. Joseph Warton, the late Lord Bathurst repeatedly assured me that he had read the whole schema of the Essay of Man in the handwriting of Bolingbroke and drawn up in a series of propositions which Pope was to versify and illustrate." And this is from the Essay on the Genius and Writing of Pope. So I have no idea what I just read. That was not particularly interesting to me. But there you go. Here's the letter. To James Boswell, Esquire. Dear Sir, in the year 1763, being at London, I was carried by Dr. John Blair, Presbytery of Westminster, to dine at old Lord Bathurst's, where we found the late Mr. Mallet, Sir James Porter, who had been ambassador at Constantinople, the late Dr. Macaulay, and 2 or 3 more. The conversation turned on Mr. Pope. Lord Bathurst told us that the Essay Man was originally composed by Lord Bolingbroke in prose, and that Mr. Pope did no more than put it into verse, that he had read Lord Bolingbroke's manuscript in his own handwriting, and remembered well that he was at loss whether most to admire the elegance of Lord Bolingbroke's prose or the beauty of Mr. Pope's verse. When Lord Bathurst told us this, Mr. Mallet bade me attend and remember this remarkable piece of information, as by the course of nature I might survive his lordship and be a witness of his having said so. The conversation was indeed too remarkable to be forgotten. A few days after meeting with you, who were then also in London, you will remember that I mentioned to you what had passed on the subject, as I was much struck with this anecdote. But what ascertains my recollection of it The undoubt is that being accustomed to keep a journal of what passed when I was in London, which I wrote out every evening, I find the particulars of the above information, just as I have now given them, distinctly marked, and am thence enabled to fix the conversation to have passed on Friday, the 22nd of April, 1763. I remember also distinctly, though I have not for this the authority of my journal, that the conversation going on concerning Mr. Pope, I took notice of a report which had been sometimes propagated that he did not understand Greek. Lord Balfour said to me that he knew that to be false, for that part of the Iliad was translated by Mr. Pope in his house in the country. And then in the mornings when they assembled at breakfast, Mr. Pope used frequently to repeat with great rapture the Greek lines which he had been translating, and then to give them his version of them, and to compare them together. If these circumstances can be of any use to Dr. Johnson, you have my full liberty to give them to him. I beg you will, at the same time, present to him my most respectful compliments, with best wishes for his success and fame in all his literary undertakings. I am, with great respect, my dear sir, your most affectionate and obliged humble servant, Burrowton Park, September 21st, 1779, Hugh Blair. Now that's a little annoying to me because that footnote before only makes sense after you read that letter, but it comes before the letter in a stupid manner. Anyway, Johnson said, "Depend upon it, sir, this is too strongly stated. Pope may have had from Bolingbroke the philosophic stamina of his essay, and admitting this to be true, Lord Balthurst did not intentionally falsify. But the thing is not true in the latitude that Blair seems to imagine. We are sure that the poetical imagery, which makes a great part of the poem, was Pope's own. It is amazing, sir, what deviations there are from precise truth in the account which is given of almost everything. I told Mrs. Thrale, you have so little anxiety about truth that you never tax your memory with the exact thing. Now, what is the use of this memory of truth if one is careless of exactness? Lord Hale's Annals of Scotland are very exact, but they contain mere dry particulars. They are to be considered as a dictionary. You know such things are there, and may be looked at when you please. Robertson paints, but the misfortune is you are sure he does not know the people whom he paints, so you cannot suppose a likeness. Characters should never be given by an historian unless he knows the people whom he describes or copies from those who knew them." I said, "Why, sir, do people play this trick, which I observe now when I look at your grate, putting the shovel against it to make the fire burn?" Oh, okay, so I guess they're changing the topic now. Johnson, "They play the trick, but it does not make the fire burn. There is a better." And at this point, he set the poker perpendicularly up at right angles with the grate. In days of superstition, they thought as it made a cross with the bars, it would drive away the witch. I said, "By associating with you, sir, I am always getting an ascension of wisdom. But perhaps a man, after knowing his own character, the limited strength of his own mind, should not be desirous of having too much wisdom, considering quid valeat humeri, what your shoulders can bear, from Horace's Art Poetica, how little he can carry." Johnson said, "Sir, be as wise as you can. Let a man be Alice letus sapiens sibi, happy with others, wise when alone. Though pleased to see the dolphins play, I mind my compass and my way." Quoting The Spleen, a poem by Matthew Green. "You may be wise in your study in the morning and gay in company at a tavern in the evening. Every man is to take care of his own wisdom and his own virtue without minding too much what others think." He also said, "Dodsley's first mentioned to me the shame of an English dictionary, but I had long thought of it." I said, "You did not know what you were undertaking." Johnson said, "Yes, sir, I knew very well what I was undertaking, and very well how to do it, and have done it very well." I said, "An excellent climax, and it has availed you. In your preface, you say, What would it avail me in this gloom of solitude? You have been agreeably mistaken. All right, that's it for today. Bye from Boswell. Oops. That wasn't the right thing. Okay, here we go.